Mila was a young girl who lived with her grandmother on the edge of a small village. The house they lived in was simple but warm, surrounded by trees and flowers. Every morning, Mila helped her grandmother with chores around the house. She loved the peace of the countryside, the chirping of the birds, and the sweet smell of the flowers in the air. Mila always tried her best to help Grandma Nari, who was kind and wise, though she had grown older and weaker over the years. Grandmother Nari often sat in a rocking chair near the window, staring out at the forest. There were times when her face looked sad and tired, as if she was carrying a heavy burden. Mila noticed this, but she didn't understand why. Every day, she would try to cheer her grandmother up by talking to her and telling her stories. But something was not quite right, and Mila could feel it. One day, as the two of them sat outside enjoying the warmth of the afternoon sun, Mila overheard a conversation between Grandma Nari and the village elder. The village elder was a man who knew much about the forest and the animals that lived there. He had a deep voice and wore a long cloak. As Mila stood hidden behind a tree, she heard bits of their conversation. The elder was speaking seriously. The bear in the forest has become angry. His heart is troubled. You know, he once had a friend, a bird who would sing to him. But now he is alone. Mila's heart began to race. She had heard stories of the bear in the forest. He was huge and frightening, with thick fur and sharp claws. But what troubled her more was the sadness in her grandmother's voice as she replied, "Yes, the bear has always been gentle when he had his friend. But now he is lonely and lost. I fear for him, but I don't know how to help him." Mila's curiosity grew. She wanted to know more, but she didn't want to interrupt their conversation. When Grandma Nari finished talking, she walked inside, looking even more tired than before. Mila decided that she would help, but she wasn't sure how. That night, as the moonlight streamed through the window, Mila lay awake in bed, thinking about the bear. She knew she had to do something. She had seen how the bear would growl and roar, and how the villagers would avoid the forest, scared of him. Mila felt in her heart that if she could help the bear, maybe her grandmother would feel better too. The next morning, Mila woke up early, determined to find out more about the bear. She washed her face in the cool stream that ran near their house and picked a basket of berries for her grandmother. As she walked through the woods to the village center, she thought about what the elder had said. What could she do to help the bear? At the village center, the elder was talking to a group of villagers. They looked worried as they discussed the bear's behavior. Mila hesitated for a moment, but then she stepped forward. "Elder," Mila called, I overheard your conversation with Grandma Nari. I want to help the bear. The elder turned his head, his eyes narrowing in thought. He studied Mila carefully, as though weighing her words. After a long pause, he said, "You are brave, Mila, but helping the bear is not an easy task. He is no ordinary animal. To calm his heart, you must find something that reminds him of his old friend, the golden bird." "The golden bird?" Mila asked, her eyes wide. "What is it?" The golden bird was once the bear's closest companion. It would sing to him and soothe his troubled heart. But that bird has disappeared, and the bear has been alone ever since. To win his trust, you must find a feather from that bird. Only then can you help him. Mila thought for a moment. Where can I find this bird? The elder sighed. The bird is elusive, and it is hard to know where it lives. But you must be patient and kind. You will have to gain the bear's trust first, before you can ask the bird for a feather. Mila nodded. I will try. The days passed, and Mila spent her time preparing for her task. She knew it would not be easy, but she was determined. She started by visiting the bear every day. She brought small gifts for him, jars of honey, soft blankets, and berries from the forest. At first, the bear would growl loudly and swipe at the ground with his claws whenever she approached. But Mila didn't run away. She stood still, holding out the gifts with a calm smile on her face. As the days went by, the bear began to grow curious. He would sniff the honey and berries, and sometimes he would even sit down to watch Mila from a distance. She never gave up, always showing kindness and patience. One afternoon, after a week of bringing gifts, the bear didn't growl when Mila appeared. Instead, he merely looked at her with his large, sad eyes. Mila could tell that he was still unsure, but he was starting to trust her. You're not so scary, Mila whispered, even though she knew the bear couldn't understand her words. I just want to help you. The bear grunted softly, but it was a sound that seemed less threatening than before. One day, after a week of visits to the bear, Mila decided to venture deeper into the forest. She had heard from the elder that the golden bird sometimes sang among the tallest trees, and Mila was determined to find it. She walked quietly, keeping her eyes open for any sign of the bird. As she wandered through the trees, she heard a soft, melodic song. It was unlike any bird song she had ever heard before, gentle, sweet, and full of peace. Mila followed the sound until she came to a clearing where she saw the golden bird perched on a branch. Its feathers shimmered in the sunlight, and its song filled the air with warmth. Mila stood still, watching the bird. It was beautiful, and its song seemed to calm the entire forest. After a few moments, she gathered her courage and spoke. "Please," she said softly, "I need a feather. I want to help the bear." The golden bird paused in its song and looked at her. For a long time, it seemed to study Mila, as though considering her request. Finally, it nodded, and with a soft flutter of its wings, it dropped a single golden feather to the ground. Mila carefully picked it up and held it close to her heart. She thanked the bird before slowly making her way back to the bear. When Mila returned to the bear, she held the golden feather out to him. The bear looked at it, his eyes filled with emotion. It was clear that the feather reminded him of his old friend, the bird that had once soothed his heart. The bear sniffed the feather and let out a soft sigh, a sound of longing and relief. Mila could see that the bear was no longer angry. Slowly, he moved closer to her, his massive form looming over her. But there was no fear in Mila's heart. She had helped him, and now he was no longer a threat. The bear bowed his head to Mila, accepting her as a friend. He no longer roared or growled at the villagers, and he even began to visit the edge of the village, walking through the forest with a calmer demeanor. As the days passed, Mila's grandmother began to feel better. She was no longer worried about the bear, and her health improved. She smiled more and spent time outside with Mila, enjoying the peacefulness of the village. Mila had learned that kindness, patience, and bravery could change even the most troubled hearts. And from that day forward, she became known as the girl who had tamed the bear and brought peace to the forest. Over the next few weeks, Mila visited the bear every day. Each time, she brought gifts, honey, berries, soft blankets, and even little wooden carvings she made herself. The bear, once grumpy and terrifying, had become more and more gentle with her. His once sharp growls had turned into low, soft grunts that seemed to show his gratitude. One afternoon, as Mila sat near the bear with a basket of freshly picked berries, she noticed how much the bear had changed. His eyes, which used to be full of anger and sorrow, were now calm and peaceful. The bear had become her friend, and every day they spent time together in the forest. Sometimes Mila would read to him stories about brave heroes, animals who helped others, and far-off lands full of adventure. As the bear listened, he would sit still, his large frame relaxed and attentive, his eyes soft and trusting. He had no need for words to understand her. Mila's voice was enough. One day, Mila felt brave enough to ask the bear about his past. "Tell me," she said gently, "about your old friend, the golden bird." The bear looked at her with deep eyes. For a moment, he didn't respond. Then, slowly, he began to speak. His voice was deep but kind, as if remembering a long-lost memory. "I was once lonely," the bear said. "I had no friends, and I wandered the forest in search of something to fill the emptiness inside. Then, one day, I met the golden bird. She sang, and her song filled my heart with joy. For many years, we were friends. She would sing to me, and I would listen. Her songs made me forget my sadness. But one day, she flew away and never came back. And I became angry." Mila listened quietly, feeling sorry for the bear. She now understood why he had been so troubled. The bird had been the one thing that had made him feel happy. And when she disappeared, the bear had been left alone, angry at the world for taking her away. "I'm sorry you lost your friend," Mila said, her voice full of sympathy. "But now, you don't have to be alone anymore." The bear nodded, and in that moment, Mila knew that the bear would never return to his old, angry ways. He had found something more than the golden bird. He had found a new friend in her. The news about the bear's change spread quickly through the village. At first, the villagers had been afraid to venture too close to the forest, worried that the bear would attack. But when they saw how gentle he had become, they began to trust him. The bear no longer roamed the outskirts of the village with a threatening roar. Instead, he wandered quietly through the woods, only occasionally stopping by to visit Mila at the edge of the village. One day, as the village prepared for the yearly harvest festival, Mila had an idea. "Why don't we invite the bear to the festival?" she suggested to her grandmother. Grandmother Nari smiled, her tired eyes sparkling with pride. "That is a wonderful idea, Mila. It's time the village sees the bear for who he truly is." The villagers were nervous at first. They weren't sure if it was safe to invite a bear to the festival. But after hearing Mila's story about how the bear had changed, they agreed. They set up a special area at the festival for the bear, where he could be close to the people, but not too close. When the day of the festival arrived, the air was filled with the smell of roasted meats, baked bread, and sweet pies. The villagers decorated the square with colorful ribbons and flowers, and the sound of laughter and music filled the air. Mila stood near the center of the village, her heart pounding with excitement as the bear slowly approached. The villagers watched from a distance as the bear walked into the festival grounds, his massive paws soft on the earth. His fur shone in the sunlight, and his once scary eyes now seemed kind. He approached the area where Mila stood, and when he saw her, he nuzzled her gently, as if to say thank you. The villagers, who had once feared the bear, now watched in amazement. They saw how calm and gentle he was. They had never imagined that the bear could change so much. As the festival continued, the villagers began to relax and even offered the bear bits of food, which he accepted with a soft growl of appreciation. By the end of the day, the bear had become a symbol of peace in the village. The festival was a success, and everyone agreed that the bear, once feared and misunderstood, had earned his place among them. As the days passed, Mila's confidence grew. She had accomplished something no one else in the village had been able to do. She had tamed the bear. Not only that, but she had brought peace to the village and to the forest. She felt proud of herself, but also grateful to the bear for trusting her. One evening, as she sat with her grandmother on the porch of their small house, she reflected on everything that had happened. "You've done something truly wonderful, Mila," Grandma Nari said, smiling warmly at her. "You've shown everyone the power of kindness and patience. You've helped not just the bear, but the entire village." Mila looked down at her hands, a little shy. "I just did what I thought was right." "You've always had a good heart, my dear," Grandma Nari said. "And now the whole village can see that." As they sat there, enjoying the peace of the evening, Mila knew that she had changed too. She wasn't the shy girl who had once been unsure of herself. She was stronger now, braver, and more confident in her ability to make a difference in the world. Winter came, and the village was covered in a soft blanket of snow. Mila continued her visits to the bear, who now had a favorite spot in the forest where he spent much of his time. He was always there to greet her with a gentle nuzzle, and Mila could tell that he was happy. The bear still came to the edge of the village sometimes, but now he was a welcome guest. The villagers had grown to love him, and no one feared him anymore. The bear and Mila had become inseparable, and they often walked together through the snowy forest, enjoying the quiet beauty of winter. One day, as Mila walked through the forest, she looked up at the sky. It was a bright, clear day, and the sun shone down on the snow, making the world sparkle. The bear walked beside her, his large body making deep footprints in the snow. Mila smiled as she thought about how far they had come. The bear, once a creature of anger and loneliness, was now her friend, and together they had brought peace to the village. As they continued their walk, Mila couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of many more adventures with the bear by her side. As the years passed, the bond between Mila and the bear grew even stronger. The villagers accepted the bear as a part of their community, and his visits to the village became regular. He would no longer wander the woods alone, lost in his sadness. Instead, he had found a new family in Mila and the village. Grandma Nari, who had once been so worried about the bear, now smiled every time she saw him. The village itself was brighter, filled with more laughter and less fear. The once feared bear had become a symbol of the change that kindness and patience could bring. Mila had learned an important lesson during her time with the bear, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply show up with kindness, even when it seems like the task is impossible. The bear had changed, but so had the village, and so had she. And as Mila looked out at the forest with the bear by her side, she knew that anything was possible with patience, kindness, and a willing heart.